Hello, everyone. Welcome to Strategic Boardroom. My name is Mark Dolfini, and you are here because you are wanting to learn about strategic planning, and that is not up on my screen yet. That would have been a great intro if I had the slide ready. You'd think I've done this enough times where I actually have this stuff ready. It actually is ready. I just didn't bring it up on the screen. And ready? Take two. And you are ready for strategic planning. There we go. Ta-da. All right. It's really good to see you. Thanks so much for joining me. I am a little bit more casual today because it is freezing outside. And although it is a little bit warmer today, I haven't been outside. It says it's in the 40s now, but man, this morning was brisk. So if you were, I'm broadcasting here from the Midwest. So let me know where you're from, and would be interested to hear about where it is that you are, what you've got in mind in terms of business, what it is that you're looking for, maybe what you're looking to get out of today. So I've got a bunch of people that are going to try to make today's session. They've been messaging saying, man, will I get the replay? Yes, you will get the replay. If you signed up through Eventbrite, you will get the replay. And for just a quick shout out to the folks over there at Eventbrite, they do such a fantastic job of getting this stuff promoted and getting it put out. So if that, just to give some love, if you have any sort of, I get nothing for endorsing them, by the way. They don't even know that I'm doing it, but they do a really good job. So if you're interested in additional events that I have coming up, go over to Eventbrite and follow Strategic Boardroom, and that way you can see what other stuff I've got coming up. I've got stuff coming up for the rest of this week and into next week already. So, and then stuff already booked out into February. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, please let me know. Hey, Carl. Carl from Georgia. Very good. I feel like I've seen you before, Carl. Is that true? I don't know. I feel like I've seen your name before. All right. Well, it's good to see. Let me know what kind of line of work that you're in as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to get into strategic planning for business owners, and we're going to go ahead and get started because we've got a lot of information to cover. And yeah, I thought I've seen. I feel like you're from Atlanta. If I'm, of course, Atlanta's gigantic, but I feel like I've seen you here before. So good to see you. All right. The what we're going to be covering, just a quick piece of housekeeping that we're going to cover real fast, and you guys have heard me say this before if you've been in my sessions, is try not to multitask, because what I'm trying to do is get you to train your brain just like I have to train my brain for not multitasking. The stuff is going to be there ready for you when you get back. Just try to train your brain into focusing on these things that I'm going to be showing you. And some of this is going to be a little bit of a repetition, especially if you've heard me talk about this before. We're going to be going through the systems approach, the psychology approach, and just different things, but there's going to be additional things to consider for your strategic planning. So there's going to be additional things, and I don't want you to miss stuff if you happen to be multitasking. So if you're joining me, looks like we've got a few more people joining us. Welcome. So just let me know where you're from and what kind of line of work that you're in. That way I can also make it relevant to you as we go through this training. So again, if you are signing up and are coming to us through Eventbrite, we will be emailing you the replay. If you're joining us from other aspects, you can see it again. Or other social media channels, you can actually visit that channel again. All right, let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to be covering is strategic planning for business owners. And let's get through the agenda real fast. First and foremost, we're going to be talking about the systems that are necessary for a business and just different approaches that you need for the system. We're going to be taking a top-down approach, which means we're going to be looking and taking a strategic approach, so we're not going to be getting into the weeds in terms of individual tactics, but we will be talking about some of those things as we go through the systems component. Then from the systems side, we take this psychology, right? So it's an S&P approach to looking and formulating your business. So systems and psychology, those are the two components to business as a strategist that I take. So we've got Michelle Hostetler, Minneapolis, grant writer, sort of. Okay, very good. Well, welcome. And you guys are having a heck of a winter up there. So I'll just put it that way. So I hope you are, hope you're weathering all that storm, political and otherwise. And stay safe, Michelle. I'm glad you could join us today. So we're talking about, we're taking the systems approach and of course the psychology approach. And then we're going to be talking about the 4 core functions of business, which have to be true in every aspect of business. And now we're going to be talking about the strategic plan, and strategic planning is really important. And there's going to be, I'm just going to be talking about different aspects of the strategic plan that you need to be considering. And then of course, there's some different resources to set you up for success for beyond today, right? Because this might be the only interaction that you and I have, and I want to make sure that you are set up good on a good trajectory after we get done with our time together today. We've got a few other folks saying where they're from. Jamie is from San Pedro Garza, Garcia. Wow, NL, New Mexico, or NL, Mexico. I am made of questions. I am not. I'm not seeing that sort of address before. NL, Mexico. Help me out with that. I feel like I should know that. Advisor and consultant. Well, Jaime, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here. And we've got Rudlin, Ottawa. Excellent, Rue. Glad you can make it today. Mick is Darwin. Jeez. Hey, John. Good to see you. From Darwin, mate. On it, driver. All right. Jaime. NL is Nuevo Leon, the state. Oh, okay. Sorry. I apologize. I don't know Mexico that well. I actually have never been there. I've been so many different places. I've been in like 22 different countries, and of course Darwin, Australia, from our buddy. So just so you know, this guy, his name is John Duffy. He is I don't know why he's showing up as Mick Jackson. He and I used to fly together in the Marine Corps, and he's joining us from Facebook. So it is really good to see you, brother. We do need to catch up. I found my cover from when we were down there, the one that you sent me. So thank you for that, by the way. I was thinking about that the other day. All right, let's get to it. So we're going to be getting through a lot of different things in terms of strategic planning, and we're taking a strategic approach, which I know that sounds a bit militant, but as you know, obviously I'm a jarhead, a fellow Marine, and I do take a strategic top-down approach, and that's actually something that I used to help with when I was in the Marines as part of strategic planning. As navigators, that's what we used to do is we would just mission planning. That was a big part of what we did, and working with the rest of the crew and other squadrons and whatever it was we were putting together. So it's taking a top-down approach to your life and your business. And we're going to be talking a little bit of components about your life today, and not necessarily from a life coaching perspective, but just so we can create a business that's in alignment with this business that we're trying to create, right? We don't want to create a business that we chain ourselves to, because that just sucks, right? We're not looking that's just not what we're looking for. And I've been down that road, and I can tell you that that's not worth it. Rue says, Rulin, Ottawa, Canada, entrepreneur and small business owner. Very good, Rue. If you feel like getting a little bit more specific about that, Rue, let me know. I mean, if you have ideas for a specific business, let me know. That way I can make this planning session a little bit more individual to you as well. So again, if you're joining us, let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in. So keep in mind, again, we're taking that top-down approach, and part of planning, it also involves creating a timeline. And that's not something I've ever really talked about in any other sessions. And we're going to be talking about creating a 3-year business timeline and how to break that down into its individual components so that it's not just so overwhelming. So you can break down these very tangible steps into daily actions that you can take every single day. So we're going to be talking about that. So when we're talking about taking a business approach to your business, we're talking about a systems approach and a psychology approach. So first and foremost, we're going to be taking the systems approach, which I wrote about in the Time Wealthy Advantage, which is just over my right shoulder here. And that is the book I just published back in May. That and its whole array of books that came after that. I published 5 books last year, and all of those, this main book and the 4 guides that are, if you're interested, if you live in the States, if you live in the US and you'd like a signed copy of those books, you can go to strategicboardroom.com and you can buy the book there, and I will even sign it for you. In fact, let me just put the URL, boardroom.com. I think that's right. So I will put that there. Let me make sure that nope, I did not spell that right. Don't go to that one. Can I edit that? I can't go to that one. Hold on, let me see. Nope, I'm going to delete that comment because I don't want you guys to go to that URL. It does not go anywhere. All right. So let me do this. Strategicboardroom.com. This is really hard to type when I'm off center here. There we go. Okay, that looks better. All right, so strategicboardroom.com. So if you go to that URL, that will, if you go right to the main page in the very front, you can buy the books, and I can sign them, send it to you here in pretty short order. So Thank you, Jaime. You are being helpful. Strategicboardroom.com. That's right. It's in the very front. So you want to click on that. You I can send it to you. However, if you are international, honestly, the best way to get those is to order them through Amazon. It's gonna be the best way just because their fulfillment is set up for all that. So thank you, Jaime. You are very helpful. Carl said superfood. That's right. Now I'm remembering you. Superfood, organic smoothies, and teas for disease prevention and improvement. Thank you, Carl. I knew I had seen you before, and that is hard to forget. So thank you for putting that up there. Okay. So the reason I'm bringing up this book is not to promote the book or anything like that, but I just want you to understand if you are trying to go deeper in the Viper methodology, that is a resource you can do if you are interested. But let's get into the Viper framework. The Viper method is an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And we're going to go through this from top down in your life and in your business. So this is going to be really, really important as you are unpacking things. Janelle is from Vancouver, financial advisor, educating families on establishing investment strategies that benefit them and their families tailored to the individual needs. Perfect. I love that. Very good, Janelle. Thank you very much for joining us today. And then Eileen is tuning in from Mill Creek, Washington, as a residential interior designer. Excellent. Very good. I've worked with interior designers before, and they're a lot of fun. Really good folks. All right, so let's get to vision first and foremost. So vision is made up of two components, and that is made up of personal vision and business vision. So again, for those of you who may have heard this before, hang in there because this is going to be a little bit different than what I've covered before. And there's also a business vision component that I have not brought up before that I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on, and that is the timeline. So just hang in there. Even if you've been through this before, I promise you it'll be worth it. The personal vision, okay, because again, the vision encompasses two different aspects. The personal vision is basically, what do you want in life? What are you looking to do? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish by having this business be successful? What do you want your life to look like? So let's say you woke up with 30 million euro or $30 million or 30 million pounds. I know they're all different denominations and currencies and amounts, right? Net amounts. But if it's a lot of money, whatever the lot of units it are for your bank account, what would that look like? What would your day-to-day life look like if you woke up, if your life wasn't defined by income generation? If your life description, right, if your personal description or your job description wasn't a life description? That's what I'm talking about. If your job description wasn't a life description. So think about that for a hot second. What would your relationships look like? What would your relationship with your spouses look like? Your relationship with your children, your relationship with your faith, right? These are all the things that I want you to think about in terms of your personal vision. We're going to unpack that a little bit further. But the main question that your personal vision is going to ask is, okay, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go in life? And it's really important you be as specific as possible about that. And I get this answer a lot of times where people say, well, I just want to do whatever it is I want to do. And I'm like, okay, then let's go with the process of elimination. Do you want to jump naked out of an airplane holding a baby shark? Like, no, that sounds ridiculous. Okay, cool. Then let's take that off the list. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but the problem is if you keep your options open too much without narrowing down in some areas, and I'm not saying you can't leave things open for exploration. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. But what I'm suggesting is when you leave that too open, you end up choosing nothing. And this was highlighted in a really good book called The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. I think that's his name, Barry Schwartz. And really smart dude. And he understood that we as a society, just in general, just Americans, Canadians, North Americans, Europeans, all across the board, for people from Australia, all of these people who have all these different choices. Now that we've got 19 different types of beans that we can buy, we are much less satisfied than we used to be even just 10 and 20 years ago because we have so many choices. This proliferation of choices has made us actually less happy. It's made us less satisfied. So it's about narrowing down those choices that you want, and of course leave some room for exploration if you want, okay? But really dial into what you want your life to look like. Now, once you've done that, then you can say to your business vision, okay, cool, how are we going to get there? Let's reverse engineer a business that's going to deliver that for us, right? That way we're not doing and involved in a business that we might hate, that will deliver this personal vision. But again, we're spending so much time at work. Why not enjoy what it is that we're actually doing, And here's the problem. And the danger in creating a business vision without ever giving any thought to a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I've heard this many, many times. Again, I've sat in masterminds and been around many entrepreneurs and who are extremely successful, netting 6 and 7 figures per month, and their life was a shambles. Their home life was a disaster. And they were, you know what they were more worried about? They were more worried about making an extra comma in their bank account. That's what they were most concerned with, because they had never actually given any consideration to their personal vision. So just a quick thing to consider when you're putting together a personal vision. And I really like this concept of a 100th birthday speech, because when you're putting together a 100th birthday speech, and let me just pull over and park here real quick. We've got a lot of people that just joined us. If you have just joined us, please let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in, so I can try to make this relevant to you. So it's not just me blathering on and making it not necessarily out of context for you. I want to make it contextual. So please let me know where you're from if you're just joining us, if you have not done that already. So what we're talking about is creating a personal vision. And this is a really good exercise for creating a vision that is going to be relevant to you. So this is where you come up with that 100th birthday speech. So you're turning 100 years old. I want you to think about this. What exactly would you say? Who would you want to be in the room? What message would you want others that are in the room to carry outside the room, right? And then what would you want others to say to you afterwards, after you were done speaking, after you stepped down from the podium? There you are in your 100-year birthday speech, right? And I want you to think about this. And I know some of you may have too difficult a time connecting to that 100-year-old person. Like, dude, I'm 20. Like, I'm not thinking I'm going to live, 100 years old, right? Or some of you may even be older and you're thinking that would be difficult for you to think. That's called future self discontinuity, right? Where you almost view that future self as a stranger. And I get that. That can be difficult. Well, here's what I want you to think about. Forget the 100th birthday speech. Just think about the next milestone for you. What would be that next milestone where maybe your kids are getting ready to graduate college, or maybe they're just getting ready to graduate high school, right? They're getting ready to turn 18. They're getting ready to spread their wings. Maybe you're going to be 35, right? That's a big milestone for you. Or maybe you're going to be 40, right? Or maybe you're going to be 30, whatever it is, whatever that next milestone for you, whatever that could be. It could be someone else in your life or you that's experiencing that milestone. Use this same framework where you could create that speech. And what would you want that to look like, right? And that's a great personal vision thing to consider. A couple of other things to consider is, if everything in life was going well for you, what would that look like? Answer that question. If everything was going well for you in life, just think about your faith, your family, and your friends, your personal growth. What would that look like? Maybe going back to school. I just went back to school to get my PhD in organizational psychology. And I'm spending a lot of time doing that because that was just part of my personal growth plan. What would you do for fun? What are things that you really enjoy doing? I love kayaking. I love exploring on the water. That's something I really enjoy. What would you do if you were in contribution, in every way that you want to be in contribution, and your fitness goals and your finances? What would all of that stuff look like from these different factors? One last set of questions, and we're going to put the fries in the bag on personal vision. I promise we'll be done, because the rest of this stuff is on business. So just hang in there for just another 30 seconds. And you can ask these personal vision questions. If your marriage or romantic relationship was ideal, what would that look like? Again, what is your vision for your marriage? What is your vision with your relationship with your significant other, right? And write that down, and maybe even read that to that person. Give them a copy. Let them know what your vision is. That way it's not a secret. That way you guys can collectively work towards something, and let them have a vision for what they see the relationship should be. Then you can also do that for your family life. What if your family life was ideal? What would that look like? If your health were perfect in every way, what would that look like? And that might not be, might be some realistic considerations that you can't control. I mean, I'm 53. I thought for sure I'd be taller by now, but here I am, 5'7". I'm tipping the scales at that. So I'm not even sure that that's really, that's where I'm at, but that's what I'm going with. But again, if your health were perfect in every way, what would that look like? And again, if your financial situation were ideal, what would that look like? And finally, if your approach to faith was ideal, what would that look like? And the last one, just simply, if you just want to answer this one question, what do you look forward to, right? Those are all personal vision questions that you can answer to really get clear in terms of your personal vision. All right. We had a couple new people join us. Just want to say hello, Armel. You are in New York and you are in the financial sector. Very good. Welcome. I actually grew up in New York. I grew up upstate. So hope you're enjoying the winter. Dallas Fort Worth in Texas, business insights and data analytics. All right, Early, thank you for joining us, and it's good to see you both. Thanks for letting us know where you're from. Okay, so that is, we talked about the vision, we talked about personal vision. Now we're going to talk about business vision. Remember, this is about being strategic. And remember, and the reason I'm bringing up that personal vision is because, again, let's face it, if things aren't right at home, things aren't right anywhere. If things aren't right with your health, if things aren't right with other aspects of your personal life, things aren't really right anywhere. So I just want you to think about that. Now we're going to talk about this business vision. Now, business vision is really going to be designed around these 3 C's of business vision. And those are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Now, I get hired as a fractional CSO, which is a chief strategic officer, or strategist, you can use that for short, but I get hired in from different organizations. And these are the 3 things that I'm looking for immediately when I get to an organization. These are the things that I'm looking for. And I will tell you, anytime I go into a dysfunctional organization, and I don't care if it's an organization of 1 or an organization of 20, when I see they have problems and they have employee problems and they have people aren't doing what they said that they were going to do, and they're showing up late and they're leaving early and their work ethic sucks and all the things, okay? And they're having trouble bringing in leads, they're having trouble with their customers, they're having trouble with their culture. It is in these 3 areas that they're having difficulty. I'm telling you, these 3 things are what formulate the DNA for your enterprise. And I know that some of them might sound a little squishy, especially core values, but I'm telling you, you would really need to spend time on these, because you cannot be strategic unless these 3 things are dialed in, right? So let's unpack these 3 things right now. So if you're just joining us, let us know where you're from. Go ahead and put that in the chat. We'd love to hear where you're from and what line of business that you are in. So let's talk about core purpose. Core purpose is specifically what business that you're in and what problems do you specifically solve. And it's really important that you're specific, highly specific in those answers. Because if someone tells me, like, oh, I'm a realtor, that tells me very little. It actually tells me nothing. Because are you in the residential side? Are you in the commercial side? Are you in the property management side? Or do you do just commercial leasing? Right? And all the, or do you do just sales? Like where are you at and what do you do? Because the more highly specific you can be in your core purpose, you're trying to build up credibility and build up that mental bandwidth and take over that mental real estate of that person in your sphere, right? And this, like, think of someone in your town. You probably can think of someone that has been in insurance as long as you've known them, right? They are the State Farm guy or gal, or they are the insurance guy or gal or whatever. They've done it forever and they are well branded, right? They really dialed into their core purpose. That's what you're looking for. The problem is, especially with entrepreneurs, especially with serial entrepreneurs, and I see this all the time, is they wander, right? And again, if I had 3 hands, I'd put them all up, because I would do the same thing. I would dabble a little bit over here and I would dabble a little bit over there. And it was very unclear to anybody around me what my core purpose really was. Especially when I was in business, I'm like, hey, can you do that? Sure, I can do that, right? If I can make money at it, I'm going to do it. I get that. The problem is I wasn't creating businesses, I was creating jobs. And all of those jobs I was creating were jobs for me. And that's not entrepreneurship. That's just being busy. Okay. So if you're really about creating a business and about being strategic about that business, find other people to do those things. We're going to talk about that near the end when we talk about leadership. It's not like when something pops up, many entrepreneurs think, oh, how can I do that? How can I get that done? Rather think, who can I get to do that? Who can I get to get that done? Right? You need to be thinking of who, not how. All right. So this is where you get really dialed in your core purpose. And if you're saying, hey, look, I'm a residential realtor on the south side of Miami, and I really like working in this district. Okay. That I can get behind. But if you just say, hey, I'm a realtor and I'm going to do whatever I can do to make money. Okay, sorry guys. I am not sure what happened. I just saw that StreamYard gave out on me. Give me one hot second to get... All right. Sorry about that. I have no idea what happened. All right. Are you guys... Can you guys see me back? Just give me a thumbs up from someone. Yep. All right, I'm seeing... All right, Lakeisha, you are Chesapeake, Virginia, home care agency. Non-medical transportation. Very good. All right. Okay, you can see me back again. Thank you, Jaime. Thank you, Carl. Okay. Yep, my apologies. I don't know what happened. That was bizarre. I've never had that happen with StreamYard, and they are usually very, very good about not having interruptions. It might have been, it's possible my internet went bad, but I didn't see anything go down anywhere else. So my apologies. So let me just make this last little piece, this last point about core purpose. Be really specific about what your core purpose is, and almost be obnoxious about what you're not, because we're going to talk about that, more about that here later. All right. So that's core purpose. Core values is about what matters to you about this business and how would the world be worse off if you are no longer in business. If you went out of business, why would that matter? And think about this in the terms of the core values. The core values are just an extension of you, right? The business is just an extension of you. So the business core values are just an extension of you. So think about this. Things that really frustrate you in business. Think about things that really maybe frustrated you about another manager, another boss, right? That really bugged you, right? That could be, it probably bugged you because it was a violation of a core value for you. So think about that. And this is super, super critical. Why, when you're starting to think about this, because the core values are what define company culture. And company culture and company brand are inextricably linked. So think about this for just a hot second. When your company culture is what's experienced by your associates, by your employees. Your company brand is what's experienced by your buyers, by your clients, by your customers. Make sense? So you cannot divorce company culture from company brand because those two things are inextricably linked. So when you have well-defined core values, that is what starts down that chain. Okay? So take the time to really think, okay, like this is what we really want to represent. And this is what we don't want to represent. This is really important that you get dialed in and think about this. Like if you're thinking about it from a personal perspective and you're thinking, okay, so in other words, like Jaime, you're saying, let's say for argument's sake that have you ever had a friend that you had to let go because they were heading down a wrong path, right? It sucks, right? Lakeisha, maybe you've had that, or, Armel, maybe you've had that where you've had to let a friend go because they were heading down a path that you just couldn't follow. The reason you wouldn't follow them is because that violated a core value for you. So think about what that violation was, more than likely because you were willing to act on that value, that it's a core value, right? I value peanut M&Ms. I'm not going to go to war over them. But someone tries to hurt my family, yeah, because that's a violation of a core value, there's going to be some problems, right, for someone else, okay? That's what I'm saying. So I just want you to think about that. Yeah, exactly, Armel. And it sucks, right, that you have to let people go in those situations, but unfortunately, that's because it's a violation of a core value for you, okay? So think about that when you're thinking of your core values for your company. So we talked core purpose, we talked core values. Now let's talk about client avatar. Our client avatar is... Jaime, you're bringing up a really good point there. Principles and values are the basis, definitely in life and business. Absolutely. And I'm telling you, and the reason why that's so important to bring up is because you don't want to wind up being in a business that you hate. You don't want to wind up in a business that are violating your core values over and over and over again, right? And I've been in businesses that I just did not enjoy because even though I created them, I never created the core values, and they were violations of my core values that I just didn't want to be a part of anymore, right? Maybe you've worked for a boss that way, right? So really, really good. Thank you for mentioning that. So, Lakeisha, I've been in this situation, so I definitely agree. Yeah, it sucks, right? Like it's the worst, especially like I worked for a company real quick. I'm just take a hot second here, but I worked for a company that I remember every Sunday it was like clockwork. Somewhere around 4 o'clock, I'm in my backyard, got some Nora Jones, just chilling on the radio, and and it was just having a great time, enjoying a Corona. And then I remembered I had to go back to that place tomorrow morning, and it just ruined the rest of my evening. And after a number of those, I was like, I am not doing this anymore. So I lost you for about 5 minutes while you get a recording. Yes, Michelle, you weren't the only one. I have no idea. The internet just it blinked on StreamYard on this side and said you've lost connection. I reconnected and it took it back. So yes, if you have signed up through Eventbrite and I have your email address, yes, I will be sending you the replay. So, and we will be uploading this to YouTube as well. So I just want to let you know that yes, you will be getting that. So my apologies for that. But we didn't talk about you, Michelle. I'm just letting you know we didn't talk behind your back. All right. So we talk core purpose. We talk client avatar. I'm sorry. We talk core purpose. We talk core values. Now let's talk client avatar. Client avatar is who you specifically and ideally want to serve. And ideally is the key there, right? Not just who's going to show up, but who ideally do you want to serve, right? I'm just kidding, Michelle, obviously, right? So and when you're thinking about this, I want you to think about their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. And that's going to be really important when you think about how you're going to try to reach these folks and their geographics, right? When you're thinking about their client avatar, you're thinking about their geographics in terms of where they are. That's pretty straightforward. You're thinking about their demographics, which is who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Do they have children? Do they not have children? Are they old? Are they young? Are they rich? Are they poor? Think about their demographics when you're thinking about these things. And you want to think of their psychographics. And psychographics is how they think and how they buy, how they think and how they buy. So when you're thinking about the psychographics, I want you to think of ALIA, A-L-I-A, and that is their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. So you're thinking about their attitudes. What are their attitudes on life? What's their attitudes towards work? What's their attitudes towards education, right? What's their attitudes towards whatever product or service that you have? They may have a very antagonistic attitude towards whatever product or service that you have, and it's your job to educate them in terms of maybe why they shouldn't, right? Or maybe why they did have an antagonistic relationship and how you provide something that's better. You provide an alternative. Change them, right? Create that market. And now you're also thinking about their lifestyle, right? What lifestyle do they have? Are they young, jet-setting type? Or are they old and they're kind of homebodies? Or are they young and kind of homebodies? I know plenty of people who are young and kind of homebodies, right? That's totally fine, right? Especially if you've got kids, right? Or maybe just like to hang out at home. What are their interests? Are they interested in World Cup or are they interested in NASCAR? Either way, right? You can relate to those people and you can connect with them. And what are their aspirations and goals in life? And if you can help them reach their goals, they're really going to hitch their wagon to you. Especially, think about how that works. Have you ever thought of a movie and you went to a really good movie and someone recommended that movie to you or recommended that book to you that you read and you're like, man, that book is really good. You're always going to hitch your wagon mentally to that person that recommended that book. You're going to remember, man, so-and-so recommended that book to me. Man, it was so good, right? Well, that's the same way it works with aspirations and goals. When you help someone reach their goals, they're always going to be thinking of you, right? It's the law of reciprocity where, again, if you do a solid for someone, they're going to want to return that favor. It's the way it works. Okay, so we talked about this in terms of 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. If you drop off here and you hate my face and you're like, man, I can't stand that guy, I don't like him, great, right? I can respect that because I am absolutely not everybody's cup of tea. But please dial into these 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Because when you have these things written down and you've got from a 1 to a 10, they are an 8 at the worst, right? If they're an 8 or better, you're doing good. Most of the companies that I've worked with that really struggle, they are at a 2 or 3 on most of these, or at least one of them. All right. So I'm just letting you know, this is foundational. This will help deliver and determine that DNA for your company. So that's the vision component. Next is infrastructure. Infrastructure is the bones of the business. It's the desks, the chairs, the software, websites, stuff like that, right? And if you're building your strategic business and you're trying to create this strategic plan and you're trying to grow strategically, you want to be thinking about the different pieces of infrastructure that you need for the 4 core functions of business, right? For your lead generation, for your sales, for your operations, and for your accounting, right? And I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but because there's so much to unpack there. But like, think about that, where, do you have accounting software? Do you have software for a CRM for your lead generation and your sales, right? CRM is it's a consumer resource management tool, right? Customer resource management tool, where basically it maintains a database of of your clients and people who've reached out to you, right? So think about that. Think about what that could look like for you in terms of your infrastructure. But infrastructure is so incredibly important. And you might be thinking, well, if it's really important, why does vision actually come first? The reason that vision comes first is because, let's say, for argument's sake, that Michelle, like Michelle, part of Michelle's personal vision is to lay on the beach in Spain for 2 months out of the year, rubbing cocoa butter on her belly. Okay, it's fine vision. What I'm saying is, if she builds an infrastructure where she has to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, that's going to be a horrific experience when she's trying to lay on the beach for 2 months out of the year, rubbing cocoa butter on her belly, right? She has to keep putting her sangria down. It's going to suck. So what I'm saying is, you want to create that vision, right? And then you're going to reverse engineer that infrastructure that's going to be in alignment with that vision. So let's talk about, so we talked about vision, we talked about infrastructure. Now let's talk about process. Process has 2 components, and process is simply how you do stuff. Process is made up of the tactical side, and it's also made up of the strategic side. Let's look at tactical process first. Tactical process is just it's how you do stuff, right? It's your standard operating procedures. Shout out to all the veterans out there. It's your standard operating procedures, your checklist items, your day-to-day activities. When I flew in the Marine Corps, I had flown, I don't remember the exact number of hours, about 2,200 hours in the C-130. And every flight, it was checklist driven. I looked at my checklist every single time. And that's what they teach you, because you don't want to miss things. And that's what checklists do, is to make sure, so it just frees up mental bandwidth so you don't have to worry about stuff. But your tactical day-to-day stuff it's your boring stuff. It's how you answer the phone. It's how you how your opening procedures and your closing procedures. That's right. It's how you prepare bank deposits. It's how you do your bank reconciliations and things like that. Right. So it's, Michelle, you already know me so well. I am just that good, Michelle. Right. So, I don't necessarily know the type of sangria, but I'm sure it's sangria, right? So all of the tactical, processes that you're going to be putting together, this is the stuff that I want you to think about from day-to-day perspective. Okay. Now, if I draw a little box around infrastructure and the tactical part of process, that's the systems component. Okay. And that systems component is really, really important, because I want you to think of that as like a battleship or a warship, because with the vision and the system defined, that's how you can create a strategy. Okay. So think about this for a hot second. Let's go back to that analogy where you have the battleship is your infrastructure and your tactical process. You've got this ship that's moored to the harbor, right? And you want to take it out of the harbor, right? You want to go out and make some trouble. Well, that's fine, but you don't want this thing just getting moored to the harbor and getting battered around by whatever economic winds happen to be blowing around. You want to steer this boat in a very strategic direction. That's what strategy does. That's what the strategic planning part of process does. So what that really does is it aligns with your business vision, and you do that with 3 P's: people, purpose, and promotion. So I want you to think about this in terms of strategic planning. I want you to think about the people that you're going to need. I mentioned earlier, you need to be thinking of who you need, not how am I going to do it. You need to step in as the leader of your organization. So start thinking of the people that you're going to be directing your strategic plan towards. So if you're going to be, again, this is about strategic planning, right? Strategic planning for business owners. Start thinking about the external people that you're going to need, which is your target audience, your target market. Maybe you're trying to, you want to bring on some new suppliers, some new vendors. Think about that. Then you also need to turn around and have that same conversation internally with your employees, right? With your existing suppliers, with your existing vendors. Make sense? So there's a people component that needs to be considered in your strategic planning, and you need to enroll these people into that strategic plan. Don't just start doing stuff and don't communicate with them. We'll come back to that in promotion. So You got the people component that you need to consider in your strategic plan. Then you need to think of the purpose. What am I actually doing with the strategic plan? Like, what direction am I going in? Fine, we're going to take it out of the harbor, but am I going east? Right? Am I going north? Where am I going? Like, what's the heading that I'm going on? So I want you to think about this when you're putting together the strategic plan. What's the purpose of the strategic plan? Is it to gain market share? Is it to launch a new product? Is it to launch a new service? Is it to vertically integrate into an existing market? I want you to think of the core purpose and the strategic purpose. And the strategic purpose must align with what? It has to align with your core purpose, just like we talked about back in your business vision. Because if your strategic purpose is not aligned with your core purpose, that's how you're going to wander. You're going to get shiny object syndrome. You're just kind of going, well, this is something that I think we could do, right? But that would be like if Starbucks started selling chainsaws. It doesn't make sense, right? So why do it? Well, it's like, well, it's because I can make money at it, right? That's what I'm saying. Like when you really dial this in, that's why you have to have your core purpose really well defined. So when you're coming up with a strategic plan, you know that it's in alignment. Otherwise, it's going to be very confusing. And the confused mind will always say no. I want to bring up this quick point. And listen, I'm not here to indict anybody, but I'm just going to tell you, like, there was a guy who I knew, and he put himself out there as Real Estate Ralphie. And he owned the color yellow, right? Like that was his color, and he just was really, really good. And he was really well known in real estate as Real Estate Ralphie. Okay, great. So Real Estate Ralphie was always posting stuff on social media, and really, in my mind, I just knew that Ralphie was a real estate dude, right? And all of a sudden, one day, Real Estate Ralphie shows up and starts pitching like mushroom coffee in his feed. And I'm like, dude, what the heck are you doing? And in less than 10 seconds, in my mind, completely destroyed that brand. So now I'm thinking, okay, is Real Estate Ralphie no longer doing real estate? Like, dude, you literally blew up your brand for like a $10 pouch of mushroom coffee. Like that made no sense to me, right? So I'm telling you, the confused mind will always say no, and I have no idea what Real Estate Ralphie is doing these days. No clue. Might still be in real estate, might still be selling mushroom coffee, but was trying to do both. And that is where you have to really make sure that your strategic purpose is in alignment with your core purpose. And for those of you who are out there and always shifting around, I'm telling you, you're really damaging your personal brand when you're always changing things up. Okay, so that is the core, that is the strategic purpose. Now, the last part is promotion. Promotion is letting people know what's on your mind. And that is communicating, right? I didn't just put communication up there because how many of you, right, have communicated with a teenager about taking the trash out? Okay, now, I don't know about you, but in my house, we have to repeat ourselves. And we have to repeat ourselves often, okay? Now, we have great kids, and we have a 20-year-old, we have a 17-year-old, and we have a 3-year-old. But we still repeat ourselves often, right? We have to promote our ideas of doing the right things over and over, okay? And there was a certain period of time where we had to promote bath time, okay? And promoting other things, right? But what I'm saying is promotion is communication, but it's doing it over and over and over. And you have to do it outwardly to your market, and you have to do it inwardly towards your people, towards your employees, towards your vendors, towards your suppliers, right? These are the sorts of things, right? Lakeisha, I think I'm feeling, I might be hitting a nerve there. So, right, you have to promote yourself quite often as a parent. All right. But again, I'm just saying promotion is absolutely critical. And it's that repetition that's really important when you're promoting whatever your strategic plan is, outwardly or inwardly. I'm bringing this up right now because this is absolutely critical. And I want you to start thinking about this in terms of strategy. This is called the unattainable triangle. And the reason why is you get businesses that try to compete on price, quality, and speed. And if you're a service-based organization, you swap the word speed for service, right? So speed or service is the same thing. But basically, you're trying to compete on price, basically being the lowest price, having the highest quality, and the best service, right? That's trying to do all three, or trying to compete on all three of those things, is a recipe for disaster. You just can't do it. And there's been many who have tried and have failed, right? Look at Kmart, right? Like, they try to compete on price, then we're doing this weird quality thing, and then trying to be best in service and having staff. I mean, it was just weird, very weird. I'm just saying. So it's really important. Now, again, for me, I would rather compete on service or on quality. I do not want to compete on price, because anytime I'm competing on price, unless you are the lowest price, and you can remain the lowest price because you have that built into your architecture, there is no benefit for being the second cheapest. There just isn't, right? So I want you to think about this. If you're going to compete on anything, I would rather compete on service or on quality or speed if you're a manufacturer, okay? So I would much rather be everyone's indirect competitor than one person's direct competitor, meaning someone's indirect competitor. For example, if I'm a strategist, okay, and people will often refer to me, oh, he's like a business coach. Okay, and I can see why people might make that suggestion, but really I'm a strategist. What I do as a strategist is I have a lot of tools in my toolbox that really, where I operate as a consultant, and coaches aren't necessarily, and I say this very broad brush, coaches aren't necessarily hired to know the specific details, whereas consultants are hired to know the specific details. And that's really where I differ, right? So I'm not necessarily a coach. I'm more of a consultant. That's where I work as a strategist in four main areas of business: lead gen, sales, operations, and accounting. Okay. Through that lens of both strategic and psychology. That's the lens that I look at. Okay. So if someone says to me, oh, well, I went ahead and hired this business coach, I just think that's a better fit, right? That's an indirect competitor for me, right? Someone else who says that they are a CSO, Chief Strategic Officer, or a fractional CSO, right? They work for multiple companies as a strategist, right? Or they just put themselves out there as a strategist. That's a direct competitor of mine, okay? But there's not a lot of people who call themselves strategists. There's plenty of people who call themselves coaches, right? So that's what I'm saying. I would rather be everyone's indirect competitor, because that means I am segmented. I'm segmented off. So I'm going to put this up there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, because this is just kind of bonus material. But if you look at this, this is known as Porter's 5 forces. I'm going to get myself out of the way here so you can see it. But really, this is about competition in the marketplace. And if you look at the top, it's about the threat of new entrants, or the threat of substitute products from the bottom. From the right, the 3 o'clock position, bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers on the 9 o'clock, right? This is all these different forces that really are challenging businesses. And I don't want to get into the weeds on this, because really it's just kind of a college level thing. But this is really where people really start competing in their business. And you've also got that existing rivalry among competitors that goes on. So these forces always at play in a market, and you have to consider these things when you are formulating your strategy, right? But here's the thing, and I want you to think about this. This is why it's really important for you to differentiate yourself in your market and differentiate yourself in your strategy. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But the moment I start competing head to head with folks is the moment that I'm wasting resources. Now I'm having to convince you why you need to go with me, and maybe spend a little bit more money, because even though they do the same exact thing, but I do the same exact thing, but a little bit better, right? You see how that's like weird, right? But the minute I say, oh, okay, so as a coach, they have this specific set of tools, and I respect that. And I rely on coaches. I have coaches myself. But the thing is that I, as a strategist, I take a completely different approach. Sometimes I use the tools as a coach, right? But that's not often how I do this. Being a strategist is a different thing, and I differentiate myself like that in my marketing. So that's what I want you to understand about differentiation. The minute you say, oh, me too. Oh, you do that thing, I do that same thing too. Oh, you're a property manager, I'm a property manager too. Oh, you're a realtor, I'm a realtor too, right? The minute you start doing that is the minute you start wasting resources. So you really want to differentiate yourself and market and segment yourself into your market as much as you possibly can. So are you competing on price? And I'll tell you, it comes really hard to know. And here's a couple of questions to make you think, am I competing on price? I don't really think I'm competing on price. Well, answer these questions, right? Think about these. Are you making pricing decisions based on what other people are charging? If so, you are competing on price. Are you offering discounts for low value or no value reasons. Hey, it's Taco Tuesday, so come buy my magic potion, right? Whatever magic potion you happen to be selling. Really? Just because it's Tuesday, you're offering a discount, right? I would rather you add on value than offer discounts. There's no reason to be offering discounts just because, like, oh, here's my thing. You want to buy my thing? Oh, well, because it's Tuesday, you can get 20% off. That is competing on price. Now, again, Black Friday and all those other things, there's no reason. If anything, I would rather stack on value. I'd rather bring on additional value rather than lowering my price, because what you're doing is you're training your customers to wait for lower pricing. All right. So think about that. Are you making pricing decisions on what you think you should charge based on your, and that now is relating on your own relationship with money. And that can be tough. That can be tricky to navigate. Often you default to cutting price instead of stacking on value. What do I mean by stacking on value? So instead of just selling this mug for $10, I'm going to give you this pair of glasses and this bottle of L-theanine, right? And I'm going to give you all of this this is all one package price, normally at $20, but I'm going to sell it to you for $12. Right? But I'm stacking on value. You see what I did there? And that's the thing. Like, that's the difference between discounting the cup for 20% off, but I'm going to stack on additional things. And the reason why I can do that is because I'm going to save shipping costs. It's important you give that reason. Reasons build trust. And this is an interesting thing. Think about this. There was something known as the copier test. The copier test. And what happened is there was a group of researchers out of Harvard who they asked a researcher to go cut in line, and they went, and this is back in the day when people in libraries were making lots of copies, and they would go up and they say, excuse me, can I cut the line? I need to make 5 copies and I'm in a hurry, right? So the person would say yes. 93% of the people said yes. Okay. And the other person went up and they didn't offer any reason at all. They said, hey, do you mind if I cut the line? Right? And they said no. But 60% of the people said yes. Okay. So 60% of the people said yes when they didn't offer any reason at all. Okay. 93% of the people said yes when there was a reason offered. Okay. I need to make 5 copies. Okay. And I'm in a hurry. That's important. So I need to make 5 copies and I'm in a hurry. The last researcher went up and they said, hey, do you mind if I cut the line because I need to make some copies? So there's no new information. Obviously, you wouldn't be getting in line. There's no new information here, okay? 94% of the people let that person in. 94% of the people let that person in line, even though all they did was offer a reason. And the reason was bogus. They didn't offer any new information. They didn't say they were in a hurry. They just said, I need to make some copies. Well, clearly you need to make copies. It's not like you're going to make coffee standing in a copy line, right? So they didn't offer any other information. The only difference was they just said, because. That is so important. So if you're going to stack on value, okay, it's important you give them a because. Look, I can give you these things for a lower price because I'm going to save on shipping, right? And let's face it, you're probably going to come back and order these 2 things because you're going to need them, right? And because you're going to need them later, I can not have to market to you over and over and over again, and I'm going to get to save some pricing. Make sense? So you offer reasons, and even though the reason might not make complete sense, the fact that you offer a reason does matter. Is that making sense? So reasons are really, really too good or too important. So it is too bad the internet connection is so bad. I get a little and then you're gone. I don't know. Is anybody else having difficulties? I'm sorry, Michelle. I don't know if it's on my end or yours, but you will be getting a full replay on this. So I'm seeing the recording here, but I promise you'll get the replay. All right. So hang in there. So how do you avoid competing? Well, don't assume that everybody wants the lowest price, right? If you have to start and think about this for just a second. If you just assume that everybody wants a lowest price, would you lower your price? Jasmine is saying that she is fine with the internet, so it might just be where you're maybe go out and come back in, Michelle. So I'm not sure. It might be going on in your end. So I apologize for that. Don't assume that everybody wants the lowest price. Again, would you want the lowest price if you were shopping for a heart surgeon, for someone that you really care about? Or maybe for yourself, right? Do you want the cheapest heart surgeon? Like, hey, like, hey, we'll give you your heart surgery, or the best heart surgery, or the cheapest heart surgery money can buy. Like that sounds terrible, right? Or the fastest heart surgery, right? Hey, we'll do your heart surgery in 30 minutes or your money back, right? That sounds terrible, right? Or would you want the best heart surgeon, right? So don't just assume that everybody wants the lowest price. That is not the case. And it's actually not always the case. In fact, it's rarely the case that people always want the lowest price, as long as they know what they're getting and it solves their problems. Okay. This is why it's important that you differentiate yourself with your core purpose, your ideal client avatar, and your core offering. Your core offering is what is part of your core purpose and what you're delivering for your client avatar. That core offer is really important, so they know, again, this is an offer, right? This is the mug, this is the glasses, this is the L-theanine, right? So that is packaged together. That's the offer. But how do you avoid competing? You avoid competing through differentiation. Now, what are ways to differentiate? You can differentiate through your leadership. Through your leadership in your organization. I have had people who wanted to work for me just because of who I was and who I represented as a leader. And I'm not saying that to be like, I'm so great, but because I demonstrate leadership that few other business owners demonstrate, they want to come and learn from me. And I've had people who have worked at other places that did not want to leave because they had great opportunities for them. And I was like, look, if you don't take this job offer, I'm going to fire you, because this job offer that came across your desk is really good. You need to take this job. And they were like, man, I don't want to leave this place, but it is time to move on, right? Because they were offered a job 5 times more than what I could pay them for the job that they were doing. Yeah, you need to take that job. Otherwise, I'm going to fire you if you don't, right? So this is important. So let me see here. Eileen's bringing up, what are your thoughts on a gift just because you appreciate them as a client? Look, gifts are different. Absolutely. Client appreciation gifts, I have no problem with that. And that actually triggers reciprocity. And that is really important. But if you're just, that is a completely different thing in my mind. Okay. And I do think that those sorts of things do build that exposure to your business, because again, it is not your client's job to remember you. So if you sent them something nice, that generally I wouldn't send them something that's always branded. Like if you send them something that's branded with your logo every single time, man, that's not a gift. That's not a gift. That they know that's promotion, even if it's really nice. But if you send them some Omaha steaks, well, make sure they're not vegan. But if you send them like a package of Omaha steaks just because you're appreciative of who they are, right? That's a nice gift. And I have done that for clients in the past. So think about that in terms of how you can put stuff out there that especially for client appreciation gifts. I find they want the best value. Yeah, and early, you're not wrong, right? I think the best value, and that's why you have to divorce price from value. Price and value are not, there's no correlation at all. If I can sell you something that I will guarantee will make you $100,000, could I sell that thing for $10,000? Well, yeah. Could I sell it for $20,000? Probably. Could I sell it for $200,000? Probably. Okay. Because if you're guaranteeing it's going to make $100,000 and then you go, well, I've got the formula and I could probably make 2 or 3 of these sales. I'm going to get my money back after the second sale. Yeah. And he's still guaranteeing it. Okay. Yeah. I could probably say $200,000. But my point is that that's where you're divorcing price from value, right? You can't connect those two. Okay. I'm vegan. That's right, man. I am zinging them today. I'm really landing. I got Michelle on the beach drinking sangria in Spain. Very good, Eileen. All right. So, and yes, I agree on the branded goods. Yep. Excellent. So the other thing that you can differentiate is through attributes. And attributes, think of like Burger King. That's having it your way, right? For a customized fast food burger, or the ultimate driving machine, right? That's BMW, right? That's for car enthusiasts who love to drive aggressively. Think of those different attributes, how you can differentiate yourself. Being first, right? Being the first in the market, or being the oldest in a market, right? Having heritage. Either of those two ways are ways that you can differentiate yourself in the market, or how you produce your thing, right? How you maybe, create your brand of thing, how you produce your thing, right? Again, how I produce my product is through the Viper framework, the vision, infrastructure, process, execution, reporting. Like, I look at that, and that's proprietary to me. Someone else can use it. They might probably change up the words, I suppose. But my point is that's proprietary to me, right? So how I produce my results, I look through that lens on everything, right? And then and how those deliver through the 4 core functions of business. So that is ways to differentiate. How are ways to not differentiate? Price, unless you are the highest. I'm sorry. Like, if you're trying to differentiate on price, again, if you can be the lowest and you have the ability to maintain being the lowest, then fine. I just don't see it as a competitive advantage to remain there. Personally, I would rather work with a higher client avatar and not do that. But again, there's plenty of people who sell based on price. People who sell donuts do really well, right? Because it's kind of counter-cyclical. So think about that in terms of price. Being customer oriented, what does that even mean, right? Like, quality of service, like, that doesn't say much. That's the default setting, right? Saying like, we want satisfied customers, right? Like, that doesn't say anything. Having satisfied customers, let's think about it. Let's think about the time when you went out to a restaurant with your significant other, and you were sitting, and someone brought you a menu, and they took your order, and they brought you food, and the food was okay, and they came and checked on you, and you said you're fine. They refilled your water, and you ate, and you left. You paid the bill, and the bill was reasonable, and you left, and you never gave it another thought. That's because you were satisfied. That's because you were satisfied and nothing more. What I want is a raving fan. I want people to be like, that's my guy. That's my gal. Oh my gosh, that place was so amazing, right? That's what I'm talking about when you're creating raving fanatics about your business, right? So being customer oriented, that says nothing, right? Oh, we've got the best service. Do you? Right? Like, do you really have the best service? Because if you don't have the best service, then people are going to challenge you on that, right? So don't put this stuff up and just make it empty words, empty rhetoric. That's not going to get you anywhere. Be really specific about how you do those sorts of things. And keep in mind that something that someone else can easily replicate, right? Like, all of us on this call can get in the cleaning business in the next 25 minutes. We can, everyone on this call, we can collaborate right now and be in business. I'm sure someone on here could create a website for us. I'm sure someone on here could run out and buy some cleaning buckets and some cleaning supplies. I'm sure someone else on here could order business cards. I am sure someone else could get a phone number set up, and we could be literally up and running in the next hour, right? So think of how differentiated that we are in the cleaning business, right? Not at all, because if you look back at Porter's 5 forces, there's very little barrier to entry. So if someone else can easily replicate these things, that is not a way to replicate. That is not a way to differentiate. Again, when we're talking about the tactical and the process, this is about the process part of the Viper framework in terms of the tactical and strategic. So let's get to the execution piece. I'm going to speed this up just a little bit. When you're looking at execution, and this is really important, I'm not going to spend, because this is really about a strategic planning. I do want you to think about the things you need to execute on, because this is a great quote by General George S. Patton. A good plan violently executed now is better than the perfect plan executed next week. So think about that. And the reason why you need to be thinking about execution is because most plans fall apart in their execution, right? And that is really, really important. And the reason they fall apart in their execution is because you have too many priorities. I love you guys as my fellow entrepreneurs and business owners, but all of you have that to-do list that has 37 items that you're going to get done today. Right. Like, yep, I got my 30, so I'm going to do them all today, right? Are you really? Well, the fact is that when you have too many priorities, it has the same impact as having no priorities. And that is why I suggest you come up with a daily 5. And that daily 5 is up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take that are going to move the needle towards your vision or your strategic plan. One of the two. So this thing right here is part of my daily 5, right? Now, for me, daily 3 works really, really well because I'm not stressed out. I'm not overloaded. When I have daily 5, man, I am running hot, right? But when I have 3 things I need to do, this is one of my daily 5 things or daily 3 things to do in terms of lead generation, letting people know and demonstrating what it is that I know, what it is that I can do. So think about that in terms of what it is that for you, if you're trying to expand market share, how are you going to go out there and let people know and demonstrate your competence? Okay. So that is really, really important. So I've got a question here. Carl's asking, can you differentiate based on your own personal experience? Absolutely, you can. You absolutely can. And that goes to heritage, right, Carl? So if you know your personal experience, my personal experience, I was a celestial navigator on C-130s. And because I was a celestial navigator on C-130s, I knew how to learn how to use a sextant. I had to learn all sorts of geometry to do these sorts of things, but I also created a mindset on how to look at things expansively and detail oriented. It was just the nature of what it was that I learned how to do that. Can anyone else try to replicate what I do and say that they were a celestial navigator? I would be hard pressed to find someone else, because at the time when I was in the Marine Corps, there was only 150 of us in the entire Marine Corps that knew how to navigate celestially. And what, the few hundred prior to that, maybe 1,000 prior to that. So in the history of the world, we're talking about 0.000001, right? Like 9 zeros prior to 1 in terms of who can replicate that. So for you, if you've got your experiences, listen, if you've got a personal brand, no one else can be you, Carl. So absolutely you can differentiate yourself based on you, because no one else is you. And don't try to be someone else, right? Be you. So I love that you asked that question. I think that is absolutely brilliant and a great way to differentiate yourself. So let's look at that last component, which is reporting. And reporting is just basically tracking your lead metrics and your lag metrics. Your lead metrics are your actions, your activities, your daily 5. Your lag metrics are the results of those actions and activities. So if you're looking to get a number of sales per month, you don't have any direct control over that. You do have direct control over your actions and activities, though. So it does make sense to track your number of sales. It does make sense to track the number of leads you have coming in, right? Those are lag metrics. But the leads that you have coming in, the people who are responding to your marketing, all of those are based on your actions, your activities. Did you put out marketing material? Did you post 2 and 3, 4 times a day across different channels? Are you putting out good content? Are you putting out good direct response? Or do you have things built out on SEO? Right? Are you doing like whatever? Are you sending out direct mail pieces? Are you writing good ad copy? Are you testing the market? These are all things that are based on actions and activities. Okay. So really, really good. All right. So that is the Viper framework. That's the systems component. Now let's talk about the psychology. The psychology component, look, systems are important, but systems are only going to get you so far, right? So we talked about systems. Let's talk psychology. Psychology are things from the personal and the personal perspective, right? The individual and personal perspective of psychology, and also the business and organizational side of psychology. When you're looking at the individual psychology, you're looking at things like self-worth and self-management and limiting beliefs, and even things like emotional intelligence. All of those things are related to personal psychology. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. So that's the personal psychology. Is that important? Yes, it is absolutely important. So if you're bringing bad relationships to money to your business, this is absolutely going to show up in your business, because again, your business is just an extension of you. So if you're bringing lots of limiting beliefs and head trash, again, takes one to know one, right? Just ask me. Ask me how I know. If you bring a bad relationship with money into your business, it's going to show. It's going to show up. It's going to demonstrate. It's going to manifest itself in not good ways. You're like, well, let me make 50 grand a month, and then I'll start worrying about that, that head trash stuff. The problem is you may never get there. All right. And again, if you've got a bad relationship with money, do you think you're going to price your stuff aggressively? If anything, you're going to price it the other way, right? That's why you have to have a good relationship with money, by having a good relationship with what's going on inside. let's look at business and organizational psychology. You're looking at external and internal components to business psychology. So I want you to think about this from a personal psychology perspective. We're going to go back to personal here for just a second. I want you to think of presuppositions. I want you to think of some things that would prevent me from hitting my goals. So when you're thinking about things that are preventing you from hitting your goals, this is where you start thinking about the individual and personal psychology, where you can start thinking, well, let me think of this in advance of what could stop me and what would prevent me, what would get in my way from these goals. And the reason why that's important to start thinking about that now, like, let's look at it from a weight loss perspective. Let's say that you decide that you want to lose 15 pounds, right? What are some things that would prevent you from hitting those goals? Well, if my family, brought home junk food, right? That would be hard for me. Okay, right. What are some other things? Well, if I want to lose 15 pounds, if I went to bed too late, right? Because I was staying up watching my shows and I went to bed too late so I wouldn't get up early and go to the gym early, right? So that's a problem. Okay, right? So you're starting to think of all these presuppositions. Why would you want to do that? Because when these things show up, you already know to expect them. That's why these presuppositions are really important to think about, whether in business or whether personally. You want to think of these presuppositions early. You want to think about these things now. So, sorry, my slide, there we go. So I want you to think about that from that personal individual psychology perspective. Now start thinking about those things, why you can get jammed up with that individual psychology. Start thinking those presuppositions. So there we go. All right. So from an external and internal business psychology, these are the things that you're looking at. This is what I wanted. Sorry, my slides got jammed up there. All right. So we're talking about individual organizational psychology from the internal perspective. We're talking about things like leadership and management. Now I'm going to spend a few minutes on leadership because it's so important. This is probably one of the biggest important things, most important things that can really impact you and in the organizational level. So you're looking at things like trust, you're thinking about things like vision, and you're thinking about things like communication. This is really important because you have to be able to create trust with your people. Has anybody ever worked for a boss they didn't trust? I hope to God you haven't, but if you have, you know what I'm talking about. Because if you can't trust them, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. You're going to be really guarded about what you say to them. You're not going to really trust. You're not going to want to go out on a limb for these people. You're certainly just not, you're not going to believe in any vision that they have. You're certainly not going to believe anything they say in their communication, right? So you have to have trust. Otherwise, the other two pieces won't matter. If they don't trust you, it won't matter what your vision is. It won't matter how articulate you are in your communication. If they don't trust you, your leadership is going to be ineffective. Think about vision. Vision is really important when you're thinking about having a shared vision, right? So, like Eileen or Michelle early, if I sat down with you and told you what my vision was for my organization, you might be bought in, maybe, right? Depending on how much you trusted me and how well I can articulate that. But if I had a shared vision with you and I said, hey, let me bring you, early, this is kind of my vision for the organization, but I really want to get your input. Let me know. What do you think? Right? And, early, or Eileen, tell me, Michelle, tell me what your thoughts are. Like, you start telling me what your, what your thoughts are around that vision, and we're creating a shared vision. The reality is people are much more likely to carry a ball that they helped inflate. And that's what's having a shared vision. So having that shared vision is really critical. But again, if you don't have a vision at all, people may trust you and you may be really articulate, but they're not going to know what the heck they're doing every day. They're not going to know why they're there. And I will tell you, for millennials, they really are about having impact. They want to know why they're doing what they're doing. And that is really, really important. And more, increasingly more, millennials, Gen Z, they want to know all this stuff, right? I'm just telling you, this is really, really important to them. So that last piece is communication. Communication is not just being articulate and not typing in all caps, but not just the fact that you're communicating and how well you speak, but how often you speak and how often you communicate. That is also important. Well, I talked to them once, they should be good. I told them once. How many times do I have to tell them? as many as are necessary. So I want you to, so for everybody who's ever shopped at Walmart, okay, who's the first person you see when you walk into a Walmart? What's the first person you see when you walk into a Walmart? Eileen's asking, yes, lack of trust due to his lack of leadership actions. I had zero respect for him. Yeah. And you're gonna not bring any discretionary effort to the business whatsoever. I mean, you might bring a little, right? Absolutely, Eileen. You bring it. It's the greeter. It's the door greeter. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Carl. Right? It's the door greeter. That's the first person you meet in Walmart. Sam Walton, when he saw the concept of a door greeter in another department store. In fact, he borrowed ideas from all sorts of different companies, right? All sorts of different discounters. He would do that all the time. He'd go in and measure and like that. He was just known for that, right? Well, he got the idea of a door greeter when he saw it to another company, and he brought it back to his board. And he told his board that he really wanted to institute having a door greeter at his Walmarts. He's the CEO. He is the founder. And it took months of him repeating himself over and over and over until they finally said, man, he is not going to let this stupid door greeter thing go. We gotta start hiring greeters because he's not letting this thing go, right? He could have ruled by decree, but he didn't. He brought this up. He enrolled them in that vision. They certainly trusted him because Sam Walton was a very trustworthy person, and he communicated it over and over and over. Have you ever shopped? Have you ever eaten at Chick-fil-A? Chick-fil-A is the same thing. And what do they say? What do the kids say there? If you go get a straw, right, and you say thank you, what do they say? Do they say sure, no problem? Do they say you're welcome? No. What do they say? You know it. I'll let you type it as I take a sip. They say, see if someone comes up with it. I think you might be typing. All right. They say my pleasure. They say my pleasure. They don't say thank you. That took Truett, Kathy, months to get that. That's exactly right. Thank you, Linda. They say my pleasure. And spot on. Right. On it, driver. That's how they used to say, if we were flying an F-18, they would call them Ornit drivers down there. It's kind of funny. So Linda, yeah, they say my pleasure, right? They say my pleasure. And the reason in Truett Cathy, he said that for months until they finally got that into the stores. So I'm just saying you have to repeat yourself and be willing to repeat yourself often. So the leadership piece, this is something that I wrote about in Leader Boss around understanding about being caring versus candor and having too much caring versus having too much candor. So you really have to understand that having too much caring means that people are going to walk all over you. Having too much candor means that people are going to, they're going to treat you like a tyrant, right? So you have to have an equal mix of caring and candor. And I'm writing, this is the premise that I'm writing in my next book called Leader Boss. So does leadership really matter? It absolutely matters. And, there was a book that was written by Jim Collins where he identified level 5 leader companies. And John Maxwell called, high-level, high-performing leaders, level 5 leaders as well. But these are the types of leaders that put their organization first. They put their people first. They're not putting themselves, they put themselves, if anything, they're in servant leadership type situations and positions. But these level 5 leader companies, they are significantly more profitable. They grew much faster. They had a very strong company culture. And guess what? They had a very defined set of core values. Oh my gosh, keeps coming back around like a bad penny, right? So these are the sorts of things that you have to consider. And this is just a quick graph that I'm showing you in terms of the types of returns that these companies have had over 30 years. So we got about 10 minutes left on this. I want to get to the rest of this. I went a little long because I had some questions I was answering, so I'm just going to kind of hit the rest of this. But the people who have led the best places to work, these are companies that always make the 100 best places to work list, and they frequently represent the highest stock returns. So look at that. Look at your Googles, your Hiltons, your Marriotts, right? They're great places to work, and they are doing really, really well with their stock returns. So leadership makes a huge difference because the truth is growth requires change, and leadership is what manages that change. So we're looking at business from a systems approach, a psychology approach. Now let's look at the 4 core functions of business, right? So that's the next element here. And this is a relatively short section, but it's a really important section when you understand the 4 core functions of business. And those 4 core functions are around lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey through your company happens in that order. So let me ask you, are all of these things the same skill set? No, they're not the same skill set. The lead generation is in your marketing. It's letting people know what it is that you're doing and what you're about, demonstrating your competence, demonstrating your core values, right? That's the lead generation. That's your networking, right? The sales piece closes that conversation and it hands it off to the fulfillment piece, right? The operations. Then once that's done, the accounting tracks all the numbers and collects the money. These are not all the same skill set. That's why you need individuals to remember the people component. You need to consider who you can hire to do these individuals and start firing yourself from these jobs as quickly as you possibly can, right? So now let's look at the strategic plan. So now we're going to plan the move. So we talked about this in the process where we talked about the tactical side and the strategic side, right? So have you ever thought, oh my gosh, I've got all these ideas, but I have no idea where we're going to implement them, right? This is why when we started thinking about strategic planning, you needed to start thinking about the different people. So what I'm going to show you here is something known as the 8 leadership dimensions. And this is based on a DISC personality matrix. So if you look at the top left, that would be your dominant type personalities. I'm not going to get into all of that because I originally had this in a leadership course, but I don't want to get into that. It'll take me about 20 minutes to explain it. But I'm just going to give you a couple of different things here. And I want you to think about where maybe you could land on this or maybe interpolate between the two, because there's some real strengths that you bring to the table, but there's also some weaknesses that you may have. So I'm just going to hit 4 of these just so you can kind of get a judgment in terms of where you might land. The pioneering type leader is at the 12 o'clock position. So that's a little bit of D, a little bit of I, right? So you've got your D's and your I's at the very top of the DISC personality matrix. Your dominant type personalities and your interpersonal type personalities. Your pioneering type leader has a very strong action bias, meaning that they often take action very quickly. They are often highly innovative and they can be really persuasive. But here's the problem, and that's probably more like me. I'm very much a pioneering type leader. And the problem with me being a pioneering type leader is even though I can be very persuasive and people tend to like me, and I have a very strong action bias. The problem is I don't provide the support that's necessary on the other side of the motivation that I stir up. And that's something that I have to be careful about because I'm like, hey, yeah, let's go there, rah, rah, rah. And then I abandon everybody. If that is you, you have to recognize that could be a weakness for you, okay? Conversations tend to be very one-sided and they leave their followers behind. So let's look at the 6 o'clock position. That's that humble leader. That's the polar opposite of the pioneering type leader. And these are people who are much more intentional about what they do. They are very people-pleasing. They're very reliable. They love routines. But the problem with them is that they take forever to move on something. They may take forever to make decisions. And they tend to adopt the, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality, which can leave them very vulnerable to rapid changes in the marketplace, right? So, because they tend to take forever to move on something, remember that the speed of the leader is the speed of the team. The team cannot go faster than the leader. So if you take a long time to make decisions, you probably have to learn how to speed up and maybe make decisions a little faster. Let's look at the affirming type leader, that 3 o'clock position. These are people who are amazing collaborators, and they are warm. They're really good at building a supportive environment that makes them extremely approachable. They tend to have an aversion for conflict, though, and that means they avoid tough conversations, and they're much more interested in being relationship-oriented than results-oriented. So they don't really see the inefficiencies that might be really glaringly obvious to other people, so they choose not to address those problems because they don't want to resist. They're kind of resistant to change, right? They're resisting change. So that could be a problem for the affirming type leader. The resolute type leader is the one at the 9 o'clock position. And these are people who are strong-willed. They're persistent. They tend to give others courage in really tough times. They have no problem at all speaking their mind. And they love to debate, right? And they love to solve problems. And they're very highly driven towards personal mastery. Here's the problem though. Everyone in their circle starts with a 1 in terms of trust. Okay. Right? Like from a 1 to a 10, everyone's a 1. Like they trust nothing, they trust no one. They're naturally skeptical. And they have a strong opinion about how things should work. They do love to solve problems, but the problem is they tend to have very good personal mastery. That's something that they really enjoy. But again, they tend to work on their own with very little collaboration from themselves. So again, if that is more you have to recognize that you maybe need to be more collaborative. And you can fill in the gaps on these commanding, energizing, inclusive, and deliberate type leaders. But I want you to think about this from a strategic planning perspective. Start thinking of who you can bring in, not how do I do it. And just start thinking yourself as a leader, how you as a leader really need to start showing up differently and maybe filling in those gaps where you're weak. Okay. So, business vision timelines. Now I'm just going to cover this business vision timeline here real quick. Jaime, I'm going to get to your question in just 1 second. So in terms of the business vision timeline, this is the thing that I want you to start to think about. And again, we talked about the timeline, and I just want to make sure that you break this down. When you're talking about creating a business vision timeline, this is where you're starting to project out with your leadership. You're saying, hey, look, guys, this is where we're going to go. This is the vision that I'm trying to create. And this is where we're going in 36 months. And this is where we're going in 12 months. And I want you to think about this in terms of revenues, profits, and metrics. Think RPM. What are my revenues going to be in year 3, month 25 to month 36? What are my revenues, profits, and metrics going to be in 12 months? Revenues, profits, and metrics. And I want you to think about that from that business vision timeline. And here's the reality. Most people vastly overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year and vastly underestimate what they can accomplish in 3 years. And that is the role of you as a leader, is to make sure that, look, make that 3-year vision, make it a knock the cover off the ball sort of endeavor. Because I want that to be a stretch goal. Make that 1 year something where you're going to learn, right? And think about this. Profit margins tend to compress over time. So you want to think about that when you're putting together your pro forma balance sheet and pro forma income statement, beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. But I want to make sure that you understand that when you're putting these things together, that you start thinking about, okay, so in my year 3 business vision timeline, I want to think about what my revenues are going to be in year 3, what my profits are going to be in year 3, and what my metrics are going to be. The metrics will be the number of units that you sold, the number of houses that you flipped, the number of new customers or new customers in total, whatever, right? That's the metrics, right? So when you're breaking down the business vision timelines, you're going to break them down from 36 months to your 12 months, right? We talked revenues, profits, metrics. Same thing with 12-month revenues, profits, metrics. And now you're going to take that 12-month and you're going to break that down into 90-day projects. Your 90-day projects are aligned with your 1-year vision, right? So you're breaking them down into 4 90-day projects for what your 1-year business vision is. You're going to align those things with your monthly goals and your weekly goals. And guess what you're going to do for your last component there? You're going to break it down into your daily 5. Oh my gosh, it came full circle. Yes, this is where you identify your daily 5 that we talked about in the execution portion of the Viper framework. So I just want to make sure that you understand, just to do a quick review, we talked about systems, we talked about the psychology, we talked about the 4 core functions, we talked about the strategic plan, and then finally we're talking about this last little component, which is the resources. But again, in terms of that daily 5, that's where you're going to go back and you're going to do the daily 5 tasks that you define for your weekly goals, your monthly goals, your 90-day projects, your 12-month business vision, and your 36-month business vision, right? And all of that should align towards your personal vision. So again, I'm just saying all of that should be in alignment when it comes to your timeline. All right, so let me just do one quick thing here. I'm going to share with you this thing, and then I'll stick around for any questions. I know, Jaime, you've got a question here. Thank you for being patient. So what you're seeing here is a photo of a guy who is he's a bank robber, and he's holding a gun at a teller. And he is making no attempt at all to disguising his face. Well, back in 1995, MacArthur Wheeler and Clifton Earl Johnson robbed 2 banks in Pittsburgh at gunpoint without any attempt to disguise their face, with the exception that they covered their face in lemon juice. And they thought for sure that by covering themselves in lemon juice that they would be invisible to the cameras. I am not making that up. Okay? So the interesting thing here is that psychologists were like, there's no way these guys thought that that would work. Well, they were so confident that these two researchers came up with what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you notice this, what happens here is that so this is a graph where you've got confidence on the left, competence on the bottom, and your confidence when you start out an endeavor starts really high, right? You peak really high in your confidence really early, and you have very little competence. Very little competence. You really don't know much, right? And you're thinking, well, how hard could it be, right? You all start down there on that bottom where that little circle is, and you get to very quickly what's known as the peak of Mount Stupid. And this is where you start to think, oh my gosh, I don't know what I don't know, right? And you start to realize pretty quickly, and then you start to crash in your confidence. You have this crisis of confidence, and you wind up in the valley of despair. Now, you've learned a little bit, right? You've got a little bit of experience behind you, but your confidence is kind of at an all-time low. And this is where a lot of business owners give up because, man, they realize it's hard, and they start looking for another shiny object to chase. So, but if you keep up with your competence and you work up that slope of enlightenment, you'll eventually head to that plateau of sustainability. And this is why it's important to have a support system. So what I would offer to you guys, and it comes at no cost to you, is you can head over to my community, which is school.com/strategic boardroom. I am going to go ahead and put that in the chat link there. And I know some of you have got some questions, so I'm going to hit that while I'm putting this in there. And I'm just doing a copy and paste. I'm not going to try to do this. All right. And Rue is saying, that was my experience when I started. That's right. The Dunning-Kruger. Yeah, that's terrible. Here is the link if you want to. That is in the chat. So if you'd like to just go ahead over there, there's no cost to join. As of right now, there's no cost to join. So if you just want to be in the community and you can ask me questions, we can chat. Jaime says, great insights, Mark. What I have seen is that emotional intelligence drives leadership to make things happen based on the core values by establishing empathy through clear communication and walking the talk. Exactly, Jaime. And it was, what was his name? Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman wrote about emotional intelligence, and he wrote about the 5 components of emotional intelligence, right? And so you're quizzing me here, but they are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills, right? Those 5 elements around emotional intelligence are really critical. And it really all starts with self-awareness. You can't, you can't regulate what you're not aware of, right? So the self-awareness piece is really important, but the self-regulation piece is also very important. It's about regulating your emotions. And if you really want to build on that leadership and your ability to have strong leadership, build on that self-awareness and that self-regulation. And then understanding motivation, like what's the motive behind motivation and understanding that component. And then having empathy. That was another component that he talked about, is not just the self-awareness, not just the self-regulation, and certainly not just the motivation, but having empathy and being able to see what's going on through the lens of someone else. And then finally having the social skills that kind of tie all of those things together, right? So those 5 components that Daniel Goleman talked about are really, really good. So Carl says, excellent presentation, Mark. Much to digest. I'm grateful. Yep. Review the recording. Carl, it's good to see you again. I'm glad you were able to show up. All right, everybody. That is all I have. I don't see any other questions. And it has been an absolute blast. You guys have been such a fun group. Thanks so much for sticking around. Go ahead and head on over to the boardroom. Rue, I learned a lot today. Rue, it was an absolute pleasure having you here. And sorry for any internet problems that showed up. I don't. Cheers, mate. Absolutely. Let's make sure we catch up soon. Will there be another presentation? I've got another one tomorrow. If you want to go to, I don't know what that one's on. I don't. If you give me a second, let me see here. Let me see what that one is. I can figure that out here. If you wait 1 second here. I have another one on Eventbrite if you want to sign up for that. That is Selling Without Fear. And I don't have very many people signed up for that tomorrow. So if you want to sign up for that, head over to Eventbrite, and you can search for it under Strategic Boardroom, and you can sign up there. So in fact, what I can do, I'll put the link in the show notes here, or in the comments section. Give me 1 second to do that. There's that. So if you are looking for the replay on this, though, I will be sending that out. If you have signed up through Eventbrite, we have your email address. I will be sending that out. So there's that. Armel, you are most welcome. What I struggle with is, as the business grows, how do you hire people who share your core values? Honestly, you define them, and then you interview people. There's always 2 interviews early, and I've actually considered putting together a webinar around that exact question, because I always have 2 minimum. I don't care what I'm hiring for. I always have 2 interviews. The first one is a behavioral interview, and it's all based around questions around my core values. So it's just a very casual interview, but trust and know it is structured, because most of those questions that I'm asking are based around my core values. And I just gauge on how they answer those questions, because I feel truly that I can teach anybody a skill. I can teach whatever the skill is, I can teach a skill. I cannot teach people to be in alignment with my core values. So I really want you, once they're defined, then you can start hiring based on those core values. And guess what? Your evaluations are also your employee evaluations that you have quarterly or semi-annual or annually. Those are all based on around core values as well. Yes, they should have some metrics around their jobs and job set, but they should also have some based around their core values and their alignment to the core values. So hopefully that makes sense for you early. Thanks so much. Great session. Took lots of notes, learned a lot. Excellent, Eileen. And the main thing, Eileen, is what are you going to implement? Like, what's going to be different for you? That's going to be important. So let's keep in touch. All right, everybody, that seems to be everything. We're going to put the fries in the bag. Thanks for everybody sticking around so much. And let me know what your biggest takeaways are from this. Put them in the comment section. And I will see you guys in the boardroom.